Man, do you like podcasts? Well then,
welcome to
No Gimmicks Needed!
So, what do you guys want to talk about?
this is the Nerd Coalition. Enjoy the show. So I'm going to end the podcast here talking about the special that AEW had last week. So by the time you're hearing this, AEW is either on tonight or on tomorrow, because it'll be Tuesday. But they had their annual Blood and Guts special show. Now, I was always the one that was a component of having Blood and Guts be the like a PLE or pay-per-view for AEW. And I felt as though they could have turned one of their pay-per-views into that for Blood and Guts, or even just make a Blood and Guts pay-per-view. Hell, WWE does War Games, Survivor Series War Games, used to do Hell in a Cell. So, AEW can do that. I felt as though it would just range better than just an episode of Dynamite. But we had it here. And also this year was the very first women's War Games match. And I was like, so when they said they had the women's, this is the first ever women's Blood and Guts match. And I was like, is it though? And I was like, oh wow, it really is. So I knew that the woman was going to come out because it's the first one, and they probably want to add it to it be annually, so every year there'll be a women's and there'll be a men's Blood and Guts match. Now, with that being said, I really enjoyed the Blood and Guts show. I thought the women had the better Blood and Guts match. I understand why a lot of people are upset about that finish about it, but I think it was doing something that AEW doesn't usually do, which is storytelling. So I'm happy for that. However, I do think moving forward, though, I do think that it could fare better having the Blood and Guts on a pay-per-view. Whether that be, because I know they want to keep Wrestle Dream, and then after Wrestle Dream, they usually do, Full Gear, and then World's End. And usually they don't have the Blood and Guts match this late in the year anyway. So, but I still think that you can still find a pay-per-view for it, because I think it'll stretch out, because if you want to keep, first of all, it's already as violent as AEW is, right? And don't get me wrong, I do love the Blood and Guts to a certain extent, and there's some things I don't. I think some things are redundant, and I do think that when you have two Blood and Guts matches, plus squeeze in the middle a Falls Count Anywhere match where they still brought down the cage, it's like there was a little things that was just overused, so things don't feel as special. And I know that could just be me. I know people out there will call me, well, I'm not a true sicko, or the case of me. I'm a wrestling fan, like I've said this before earlier in the podcast. And I just enjoy wrestling, so this is what it's going to be. But we're going to get into it. I'm not going to give a full breakdown, match for match, spot for spot review. I'm just going to talk about who came into the match, the spots I liked, and just basically the overall feel of the show. So we kick off the show with the Women's War Games match. So on one team, we have the Triangle of Madness, which is Julia Hart, Sky Blue, and Tekla, with Megan Bain and Marina Shafir and Mercedes Moné. So taking on the team of Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale, Harley Cameron, and Timeless Tony Storm and Mina Sakanawa. So it was 6-on-6, and I was like, I was expecting 5-on-5. I've seen 4-on-4. I've seen 5-on-5. I've even seen two teams, 3 teams of 2. So but just having 6-on-6, I was like, that's a lot, isn't it? So, but neither here or there, they did 6 women, and they went 46 minutes. 46 minutes. So they gave them plenty of time, and they came out there with, an edge about them. Like, hey, look, this is our first one, so we're going to show out. And boy, did they do that. Because starting off in the match, we have Sky Blue and Willow Nightingale. So they try to find weapons, and they start going at it. And some point in the match, I'm talking about before the first participant was even entered. I think they start off 5 minutes, and then every 2 minutes, another participant comes into the matchup. But before we get to that, Sky Blue gets busted open. I'm talking about, this is giving reminiscent of Eddie Guerrero Judgment Day with JBL type busted open. And or if for people who don't watch WWE and want like a more of an AEW reference, remember when fun fact, Willow Nightingale was in this match too on Rampage. It was a couple years ago, where it was Willow Nightingale and Ruby Soho, who they had a tag match. I forgot who they was going up against, and Ruby Soho, Ruby Riott, if y'all remember her from WWE, she bled. I mean, she bled bad. I was like, yo, do all this on a Rampage? Like, she bled stuffed pig bad. Well, this is how Sky Blue was bleeding. And this is before Julia Hart came out, because Julia Hart was the next one that came out, and they were, doing their double team moves on Willow Nightingale. And then after that, the next participant is Harley Cameron. So the heels obviously had the advantage. Harley Cameron comes out. She comes out with a chair and goes right up to Sky, entering the cage, and then we do that. Then the next after that, we have Tekla, who comes out next, and that the whole Triangle of Madness is now in the ring. So we have Tekla. Then after that, we have Jamie Hayter that comes down, and she brings the trash can out. Jamie Hayter has like a bag. It's clear that the bag is like thumbtacks, right? But she like hits Sky Blue with the bag, but a part of the bag opens and some tacks kind of like fly out at the camera. So it's not a lot of them, but you can at least tell that you have to acknowledge that in that bag is thumbtacks, or is either thumbtacks or the shattered glass, because there was shattered glass in the ring also. But it was thumbtacks. It was thumbtacks. And then the next participant is Megan Bayne with Penelope Ford. She come out with her. Penelope Ford, I believe, was supposed to be in this match, and then her and Queen Aminata was both supposed to be in this match, but they're both injured, so they had replacements in the match. I don't know offhand who are the replacements, but after Megan Bayne comes, then we get Chris Statlander, who runs down to the ring. And she still has her belt on, going in there and kicking ass, right? At this time, Queen Aminata is out there, and she's keeping Penelope Ford from interfering in the matchup, and they kind of cancel each other out. Next up is Mercedes Moné. Now, Mercedes Moné is taking her time coming down to the ring. She has tables on the outside, which is displaying all her belts. She has some champagne out there, and she goes, takes a sip. Like she's taking her good old time before she gets into this matchup. And she gets into the matchup, goes after Willow Nightingale. And then now here's the thing. The one thing that was a common theme in the night was two things I recognized. Number one, the tables were shit, because none of them was breaking, even for the men. I was like, what is up with these tables tonight? And number two, I'm going to say this. When it comes to comparing the War Game style matchup or the Blood and Guts style matchup from both companies, I like the look of AEW's better. I like the top on the cage, because once again, I grew up a WCW guy, so that old school War Games cage, a cage with the top surrounding the ring. Now their cage is much more better. It is bigger. You're not going to get caught on the roof like Brian Pillman did and getting concussed with Sid Vicious, or Sid just like powerbombed because he had enough room to rotate him. We don't have to have that short amount of a cage, but I like the top on it. WWE has the top off so they can do spots onto the cage, going down to the ring. Now, with that being said, I do not like the fact that they just keep going in and out of the cage. And I'm just like, isn't the cage supposed to be locked? Like, they did that a lot. And I understand you get your spots off, you do all stuff like that. And I didn't even really like it too much when they did it with Lethal Lockdown in TNA. But the problem is, they had to do that because you have 10 guys in that one ring with that one cage. And that was supposed to be their War Games, but they never did a 2-ring thing. And it was hard to have 2 octagon rings. But I felt as though that when they did the 2 regular rings, they could have did 2. They had the square circle, as they call it. They could have did 2 rings also, but they didn't. So that's something I just wanted to put out, because the women here was the indication. They was doing the spots, because even on the outside they had the bit of spikes that John Moxley introduced. Was it last year? I believe it was in the Blood and Guts matchup, and they had that out on the outside. And Chris Statlander was fighting I forgot who it was, but she gets knocked down on the bed of spikes, and it sucked. It looked like it sucked. Next participant out is Mina Sakanawa. She comes out with a barbed wire bat. She tosses at Mega Bane for distraction, but it hits her with a drop kick. And then the final participant that comes out is Marina Shafir. She comes through the crowd oh no, I'm sorry, she's not the final one. She comes through the crowd though. She comes out in Comet Boots, but she gets in the ring barefoot. And what the thing is, I'm like, okay, a lot of us wrestle barefoot, but the problem is the amount of tacks and broken glasses in the ring, and this one was in there barefoot. She got all the credit for me because I wouldn't be doing that shit at all. And I think after Marina Shafir came out, because Marina Shafir I think is the one that knocked Chris Statlander on the bit of nails because they pulled the bit of nails out, and then the countdown comes out. Toni Storm comes out. Now, once Toni Storm's in the match, now just like any War Games matchup, the match officially begins. So Toni Storm comes in there. She got the pearl necklace, and she starts hitting everybody with the pearl necklace. Now in the match, Harley Cameron pulls out Minnie Monet. And then I like this actually spot because Mercedes is tired of her bringing out the Minnie Monet. So she rips the puppet off and tosses it. But Harley Cameron has brass knucks underneath the puppet. So when she does that, when she turns around, she hits her with the brass knucks. I thought that was clever. I actually like that spot also. Now there was this one point where Julia Hart, because she's small enough, sneaks out from the trusses of the cage, and she goes demanding for the key from the officials. Who gets dropped by Tekla, and then gives Hart gets the key. Then they open the door, so now they're starting to come out the cage. And that's the one thing I was talking about, because okay, I understand being different, and I understand especially for the first women's blood and guts match. I was like, but you're supposed to stay in the cage. I like the rules of that. But however, if you want to split on the outside, hell, Shawn Michaels and Undertaker split out to the outside the first Hell in the Cell match. So I get it. But when you have it back to back and the men do the same shit, it's just like, all right, you know what I'm saying? It's because something don't feel special. But the women did it first. I guess it felt more special doing it that way. Well, Chris Statlander is on the side of the cage, and then she's fighting Mercedes, but she gets her up in the Samoan drop and gives her a Samoan drop through the table of all her championships. So she gives her a Samoan drop. That takes them out. Now back in the cage, Toni Storm goes at the Sky Blue. Sky Blue. Blue Sky. Sky Blue and Marina Shafir before dumping the pail of glass. That's where the glass come in. He had the pail of glass. No, I think Storm hit a DDT either on Sky or Marina Shafir. I can't remember what it was. Then she had this mirror. She put on the side to do a hip attack to Mina, but Mina tossed it in her face. So now we got all this broken stuff all over the ring. But now Mina, I know she's clever. She has a barbed wire bat. She takes Megan Bayne, puts her in the figure four with the barbed wire bat. I was like, is she going to give up? Because it was surrender, give up type thing. And she had the figure four in the barbed wire bat. But Marina Shafir, with all the broken shards of glass, with her bare foot, steps on it with her bare foot, then steps on Mina on her chest. Now, at this whole time, all of the face team is kind of taken out, okay, with all the other stuff that happened. So that just leaves Toni Storm being held by the heel team. And Shafir puts Mina in this chokehold, and then Megan Bayne takes one of Monet's championships, and she's beating the shit out of Mina and forcing Toni Storm to watch. And now, for those who don't know, that is her tag team partner, and they are in the tag team tournament. And Marina Shafir and Megan Bayne are a team, so it was a storytelling element because they beat her so bad to the point where Toni Storm had to surrender for the team to save her partner because she needs a partner. And she loves her partner. And so that's why I wasn't mad at the ending. I know there were some people I saw that did not like how it ended, but I was like, honestly, I didn't mind it. I really didn't mind it. Now, I didn't get the backstage stuff with the Don Callis family and Jurassic Express. There's a Falls Count Anywhere match with Adam Page and Powerhouse Hobbs. This was a fun little matchup. And once again, they kind of implemented the ways of the Falls Count Anywhere thing. Action spills to the outside. Powerhouse Hobbs basically tries to powerbomb at least Adam tries to powerbomb Adam Page at least onto the announce table or off the announce table, but he shoulder back tosses Powerhouse Hobbs and he like lands on his tailbone and bounces. I was like, that looked like it sucked. They fight some more. They part the steel steps and then Hobbs charges in there and misses it. He just hits the steel steps. They go into the crowd and they're fighting into the crowd. Even at one point, Heyman gives Hobbs a 10 punches and drinks somebody's beer and gives him a moonsault down. And they fight some more, and then all of a sudden they go up on this balcony thing. And it gave me Royal Rumble 1999. Adam Page hits Hobbs, and Hobbs falls into all like this equipment or stereo equipment, and sparks start flying and everything. It's like it's almost just like Mankind from Royal Rumble 1999. Adam Page comes down, Hangman comes down, and he goes and pins Hobbs, and that's it, basically. He wins. So, Shabana blindsides him after the match. Samoa Joe's there as well. The Ops come after Page. And Joe, but see, then Joe calls for the cage to be lowered down. And I'm just like, what? We got a whole other thing to go. I'm like, so what? Here we go. We got he has to lower the cage down. So the cage is lowered. But then Eddie Kicks and Cook come down to make the save, and then Ops retreat, and then Page on the microphone said, well, if you wanted the cage, it's basically set up their cage match for Full Gear. So it's going to be a cage match between Samoa Joe and Hangman Adam Page. That's basically what it was. Then we also get a segment with FTR and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Good to see Ricky the Dragon Steamboat back also. But this is much more set up for Full Gear because, like I said, I wasn't going to get too in detail about what they said in the promo, but then they tried to attack Ricky Steamboat, but then Bro Dino comes out to make the save. Also, Ricky Steamboat gets a couple hits. And Ricky Steamboat still looks good for his age, by the way. Now, it's time for the main event. It's the men's blood and guts matchup. So now we have the Death Riders, Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, Daniel Garcia, and Pac taking on Darby Allin, Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly. Good to see Kyle O'Reilly. You know what I'm saying? I like Kyle O'Reilly. The crowd hates the crowd hates Wheeler Yuta, which we know. And the ones that start off the match is Darby Allin and Wheeler Yuta. But Darby attacks him on the outside. So before we even get started, he starts beating him up on the outside and throwing him against the cage. And then he throws him up against the barricade. He goes for a charge. Darby gets out the way. Wheeler Yuta comes in there, kicks the cage door, hoping that Darby so he can't get back in. But eventually he does get back in. And they fight for some more. But then Darby has his thumbtack skateboard. So he takes that, puts that across Wheeler Yuta's head. And then, of course, Wheeler Yuta is bleeding. Now, the heels had the advantage in the women's. Well, the men have the advantage in this one. So Orange Cassidy comes out next. So when Cassidy gets in there, he has his own sunglasses. He breaks them and uses them as a weapon. Never seen him break his own glasses. Next up is Daniel Garcia for the next position of the matchup. And then after that, we have the countdowns from Mark Briscoe. But Mark Briscoe does not come out. And we don't know where he's at. And we see that he's been attacked backstage. So Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong come to check on him. And they said, well, one of us got to go into the ring. So Roderick Strong volunteers to go into the ring. And he comes down. And as he comes down, it's immediately tries to go. It goes into the next countdown, which we have Claudio Castagnoli, who's out next. And he goes and he gives Darby Allin a giant swing. And while Orange Cassidy jumps on his back and is trying to choke him, I was like, Claudio is a strong human being. And the fact that WWE let him go bothers me a lot. I loved Cesaro, okay? And I was like, he was just underutilized in WWE. But I was like, Claudio now, yeah, that man needs to be world champion. And coming out next is Kyle O'Reilly. Now, honestly, throughout the middle of this matchup, like, it was just there. And once again, I don't know if it was fatigue. I don't know if the fan was getting fatigued because, once again, you have seen most of this stuff in Spots of Violence already in the night, not even an hour ago. And I don't know, but it just felt very mid to me. At least until it picked up at the end, obviously. But I felt as though the match in the middle felt... I really felt as though the match in the middle felt very mid, to be honest. Jon Moxley is out next, and Moxley comes prepared. He comes there with a fork. And he beats down. He starts raking Darby Allin in the back with a fork. That sucked. Well, there's supposed to be another countdown for the final babyface because they had the advantage, but there is still 5-on-4 advantage. And then after that, we get Pac that comes out. So now we got the advantage, but then here comes for the hero spot. Mark Briscoe does come out with the toolbox and some chain cutters because they locked him in there now and they got the advantage. How it should be. But he got the bolt cutters. He comes in there and he breaks the cutter. So now the door's open. Now, at one point, they hit a spike pile driver. Daniel Garcia and Moxie hit a spike pile driver on Darby on some broken glass. There were tables all set up, and there was one that Claudio tried to go through, Will you tried to go through. These tables was not breaking tonight. Like they were trying. And these tables, in the women's match or in the men's match, they was having trouble breaking, like for real. I was like, what is up with these tables, right? At one point, on the outside, Mark Briscoe sets up a table. He gives a suplex Daniel Garcia to the table on the outside. Wheeler Yuta and Mark Briscoe go to the top of the cage. He gives him a J driver on a chair on top of the cage. Darby comes to the top of the cage and gives like a coffin drop to everybody down below. There was one spot that was crazy that Claudio was just holding Orange Cassidy. He has his hands in his pocket and Moxie staples Orange Cassidy's hands in his pocket. I was like, that was insane. But then Pac and Darby are on the outside, and then they're fighting on the outside. Then Gabe Kidd comes in there and starts attacking Darby. Then they set up 2 tables. So there's no entrance tunnels that they come out. Well, they're on top of the entrance tunnel. Gabe Kidd has 2 tables set up and lights it on fire. And then Pac press slams Darby Allin through both those tables on fire. And even as he goes and falls through on fire, Darby still got some fire left on him. Darby's insane. Okay, I was like, it's like Darby's like almost wants to die. Like he's a straight daredevil. And usually when they fall to the table like that, the fire goes out and stuff. But no, he goes through it and the fire is still on him. I was just like, that's insane. But back in the ring though, I did like the finish because Kyle O'Reilly puts the ankle lock on to Jon Moxley, and I like the storytelling here that Jon Moxley always taps out because this is what he does. And so he quit at Wrestle Dream, and he quit here because he tapped out on the broken glass where Kyle O'Reilly had him in the ankle lock. I thought it was good, and the Babyfaces win the matchup. So this has, after Moxley has given up twice, this has to be the end of the Death Riders. You got to tell that story, and this has got to be the end of the Death Riders as Moxley has been quitting. So overall, I enjoyed Blood and Guts. Like I said, the nitpicking stuff about them staying inside the cage and stuff like that, obviously, because that could be old school at times, but I like crazy action shit, so I don't mind them leaving the cage and doing all the crazy stuff. It's just that when you have it in back-to-back matches, nothing feels special. That's what I'm saying. Nothing feels special. I don't mind. I want to reiterate that I don't mind that they do this stuff. It's just that when it don't feel special. That's why I don't like when Money in the Bank is a pay-per-view and they got 2 of them matches on the same show, or like when they had 3 Hell in a Cell matches and the WWE will force a certain Hell in a Cell match to do certain things because you don't want to overshadow whatever match that they want to showcase. Like, I hate that. It needs to be its own thing. Now, I'm all for the women having the Blood and Guts match and stuff like that. And I know even with Survivor Series, they're going to make that 2 nights, so you're going to have 2 nights of War Games matches. I get all that. But it's just better when that match stands on its own. And I'm not sitting here saying the women shouldn't have had their match. I think the women definitely should have had their match. And sometimes I think whatever the storyline holds, they should have the match for Blood and Guts. Same goes for War Games. But overall, it was still decent. It was still decent Dynamite.